The IEA studied unemployment as a socio-economic issue affecting the country. It is a growing phenomenon that attracts the attention of leaders in the public and the private sectors. We do have elaborate policies that define and govern employment in Kenya. However, while the existing legislations discourage discrimination and inequalities in employment, they do not clearly define and address the specific challenges that women, youth, and persons with disability face in economic participation. What are these policies? We have the Employment Act, Chapter 226, that governs employment in Kenya. It is an act of parliament to repeal the Employment Act 2007 to declare and define the fundamental rights of employees, to provide basic conditions of employment of employees, to regulate employment of children, and provide for matters connected with the foregoing. Each Kenyan who is looking for employment should be able to have a look at this act and inform themselves on the rights that they have in the workplace as well as employers. We had a number of research findings. Among them include a look at the recorded employment in formal and informal sectors. We see that the number of people working in the informal sector has rapidly increased from 2007 to 2016. The number of people working in the informal sector has almost doubled. And on the other hand, the number of people working in the formal sector has increased by 710,000 people. So more people are joining the informal sector as opposed to the formal sector employment. So according to the data we have, 16.8% of the workforce as at 2016 worked in the formal sector and 83.1% worked in the informal sector. Kenya's population has also steadily grown from 2007 to 2008. The population has grown by 26.8% from 2007 to 2016. So of course, as the population grows, the labor force continues to grow, and it has grown by 68% from 2007 to 2016. The number of unemployed people also grows at a fast rate between the period 2007 and 2012. It slows down between the years 2014 and 2016 according to the data we have. There's also a significant increase in the unemployment rate between the years 2008 and 2009 from 11.2% to 12.17%. And it may be as a result of the post-election violence that must have caused instability in the investment environment, in the investment and business environment in the country. The private sector employment from 2007 to 2016 is significantly higher than public sector employment. In 2016, private sector employment is at 1.81 million, which is 71% of the total number of people employed across all sectors. The gap between male and female wage employees narrows down in the year 2012, simultaneously with a drop in the number of employees in the year. The gap thereafter from the year 2015 begins to widen. This may be as a result to an increase in the number of female employees joining the informal sector as opposed to formal wage employment. Unemployment rate of females on the other side as a percentage of the female labor force sharply increased from 13.46% in 2008 to 14.63% in 2009. As from 2009, the rate continued to gradually decrease until the year 2014, where it began to rapidly decrease from 14.2% to 13.17%. One can easily evaluate the policies employed across the period under review under the different regimes directed towards affirmative action to decrease the unemployment rate of women as a percentage of the female labor force. We find that once you look at the ruling party's political party manifestos, you'll see what they had in their agenda as far as employment is concerned, and it's reflected in the data that we currently are presenting. According to the data by Global Disability Now, approximately 66% of persons with disability live in the rural areas. It is therefore only natural that 67% live in poverty and only 19% are receiving a secondary education. This calls for action in terms of data collection and collation to successfully evaluate the needs of persons with disability in employment. We find that the data that we have available is not as aggregated as the previous data that I have presented. Youth unemployment, on the other hand, sharply increases from 2008 to 2009. It maintains its high levels between 2009 and 2013 and begins to rapidly decrease from the year 2014. We can attribute this to the policies adopted by the ruling party to improve the economic participation of youth. The youth unemployment rate has, however, not managed to decrease to the levels at which it was in 2007 at 21.48%. It stands at 22.1 0.17% in the year 2016. It is also important to note that employment data on youth and persons with disability is not as disaggregated as the overall data and as that for women. This presents a gap that exists in finding data that can be used for decision making about persons with disability and about the youth as important segments of the population. In order to successfully address the needs of youth and persons with disability in employment, it is important that their demographics are captured on a yearly basis. It is important to note that employment data on youth and persons with disability is not as disaggregated as the overall data, and this is the case with that for women. So this presents a gap that exists in finding data that can be used for decision making about persons with disability and about the youth as important segments of the population. So in order to successfully address the needs of youth, persons with disability, and women, it is important that their demographics are captured on a yearly basis. So we'll have a look at the challenges, recommendations, and conclusions. Kenya's labor force largely experiences structural unemployment, which is long-term and chronic unemployment that is as a result of lack of skills. Language barriers, discrimination in the labor market, economic changes are also some of the causes of structural unemployment. Among other causes of unemployment is the unequal distribution of labor across urban and rural areas, automation of business processes, poor transition of devolved services where education may not mean available opportunities for employment at the county level. There is poor demand for a diversified labor force. There are also cultural prohibitions that prevent acquisition of skills for particular groups like persons with disability, youth, and women. Owning of assets and inheritance, especially by women, youth, and persons with disability, whereby they are not, in some communities, they are not allowed to own assets, and as a result, they're not able to generate capital for their own employment. There is also a seasonal demand for labor in some labor-intensive industries like agriculture, which employ people seasonally. There are low levels of innovation in the country, and of course, the global economic recession would also affect the unemployment rates at the national level in Kenya. And farms have been said to underutilize their capacity in the country. So that is one cause of unemployment in the country, whereby farms are not employing at their full capacity. We have some public sector and private sector solutions. The public sector solutions include the following. Let's encourage the growth of industries in the different counties through county revenue allocations and implementing consequences for the misappropriation of funds. Let's subsidize education and vocational training courses to improve the uptake by members of the public, especially women, youth, and persons with disability for use in formal employment. Of course, this would require a study and research or a survey to find out which fields are important to the country, that in which women, youth, and persons with disability can take up training to take up the jobs. Let's also try to reduce the cost of starting up and conducting business by reducing the cost of production inputs, including corporate taxes and cost of raw materials. The government should also ensure compliance by public and private firms on the Employment and Labor Acts, as well as other legislations that address employment inequalities. We should also allow for growth of labor unions that are not overregulated or underregulated to reduce worker exploitation, support progressive labor legislations, increase productivity, and promote democracy at the workplace. We also have private sector solutions. Let's increase public-private partnership projects that enable the government to create more opportunities for employment as it increases its spending on infrastructure and skills development. We should also transition our private firms from the informal economy to the formal economy through heightened accountability and a desire for structured systems. We should also increase our demand for decent jobs by the workforce, which shall transition from the economy from an informal economy, largely informal economy, to a formal economy. Private firms should sustainably increase their allocation for training of personnel to allow for skills development on the job. And finally, define the inequalities that exist in employment against the women, youth, and persons with disability. And we should also lobby for them to be individually addressed in the Employment Act and other legislations that exist to address employment inequalities. Once we articulate what the issues are in an in employment in this country, for different groups, it is the only time we would be able to find feasible solutions that can be implemented. Of course, as we make all our decisions, it is very important to conduct a cost-benefit analysis of the policy alternatives so that we can correctly identify the social costs and social benefits of policy projects. Some projects may look good on paper or may look good when we talk about them, but they're highly costly and would cost us more than we would benefit. So as we have seen, we have both private and public sector solutions to unemployment, as there is a responsibility for all members of Kenya's public in the reduction of unemployment. So the solution should touch on different sectors of Kenya's economy, including education, manufacturing, agriculture, energy, industrialization, and there should be cooperation and coordination across those sectors for us to solve this problem efficiently and effectively. The successive years should reflect a situation where there is increased partnership and coordination between national and county governments to utilize the centralized resources available to the country while taking into consideration the unique characteristics and potential of each of the 47 counties in Kenya.